So Illmatic is finally done. Mm-hmm. It gets released, and it just goes crazy.
Oh, it was insane when Illmatic dropped. I felt like I just dropped an album. I swear. I mean, my whole family was so excited for Nas. His whole family, all of his friends, my entire circle. You know, we were all rooting for him. It was a big day for Nas. It was a big day for Queens. It was a big day for Queensbridge.
Oh yeah.
You know, Nas is huge in Queensbridge, and he's always been, you know, like that popular guy in the projects. And the crazy thing is when I was pregnant, at the very end of my pregnancy, we had some issues at 7C. So we had to move, and we ended up staying with Nas's mom in the projects because I was so pregnant. I was about to give birth. You know, we were in like this transition stage. It was just best that, you know, we just stayed local. I was still working. He was still in the studio. So moving to Queensbridge Projects for 2 months, that was a life-changing experience.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing to ever come out of Queensbridge.
Yeah, yes.
Point blank, period.
Yeah, and I mean, and just living in the projects is a different experience within itself, you know, just as a regular person. And I was wowed by it, and even, you know, more, I admired him just a little bit more, like, wow, you've gone through all these trials and tribulations, and, you know, we don't all come from stellar environments. I grew up in Jamaica, Queens, in the hood, but I grew up in a house, and my grandparents had, you know what I mean? It was a little bit different. But this was really like hood stuff going on.
Because there was a documentary that I saw about Nas, and they showed the picture, the inside cover of Nas in the Queensbridge projects with all of his friends. And they started going through the list, and it's like dead, life in prison, dead, 40 years in prison, dead, prison, dead. Like almost every single person in that picture is either
gone.
dead or in prison.
When the 2 months that I lived there, well, that we lived there, four of his friends had gotten shot, and one actually died. I believe he got shot in the leg, and then it was like a shock thing. But I mean, just to have so many tragedies in such a small period of time, you know, that was overwhelming for me because I was pregnant. It was extremely overwhelming for him because he was working on his album and, you know, trying to transition into a totally different lifestyle. But at the same time, this was still relevant, the things that were going on in the projects. His mother still lived there, his brother still lived there, like we were living there, even though we were about to transition into another home in Long Island. He couldn't separate himself from, you know, the lifestyles. You know, like, yeah, you can go home and drive to Long Island and get on the highway, but then this is what keeps you relevant. This is what you're talking about. This is what you're rapping about. This is what you're experiencing on a day-to-day basis because this is the environment you choose to be in. And I couldn't understand it in the beginning, like, well, why don't you just leave the projects and just never go back? And, you know, that's like saying to someone, why don't you just leave Jamaica, Queens and never go back? You know, you are where you're, you know, you live where you live. You're brought up in these environments and you deal with it the best way you can. And it either makes or breaks you. And in this case, I think it really just made him, especially when you look back at all the people who didn't make it.
Yeah. So Illmatic comes out. It goes crazy. Everyone is feeling it across the board. Where are you guys relationship-wise at this point? You guys, Destiny was born at this point?
No, Destiny, she wasn't born yet. I didn't have her until June. Illmatic, I believe, came out a few months before her, before I gave birth to her. But we were in a great place. We were in a great space. We were excited. Like I said, I felt like I was dropping an album as well. This was like his first project, and he worked so hard on it for so long, and everyone was waiting for it. Everyone. It was like one of the most anticipated albums of that era, so to speak. And people had a lot of expectations, and I think that he fulfilled, you know, all those expectations and then some.
Yeah.
I was really happy for him, and I knew at that point, you know, he was going to definitely be an icon in this thing we call hip hop.
So the album comes out, you have your baby, and then where are you guys' relationship?
And then the money started rolling in.
The money starts rolling in, of course. Because the record sale starts happening, the show
Shows
money,
coming.
everything.
I mean, people want to invest now, and back then when they did the soundtracks, the song was really about the movie, so it was a bigger check, so to speak. I think there was like a little bit more money to be made.
Oh, yeah.
Back then. I mean, social media is bigger and it lends more opportunities, but I think back then,
people were buying albums
because we weren't
back
so
then.
oversaturated. Exactly. People were buying albums. They weren't downloading and
CDs.
streaming. Exactly.
So, back then, if you heard a hot song, you usually had to buy the whole album.
Exactly.
So,
right.
Because sometimes they wouldn't even release a single. You'd have to buy the whole album. That's
right.
obviously Hammer did it. But yeah.
And so people were actually purchasing music at this particular time. So the money was rolling in.
Okay.
And Nas is super generous. And he's very caring, he's loving. He took care of everybody, took care of his mom, made sure his brother was okay, took care of his family, and then he went on tour.
Okay.
And that was a rough time for me because I was a new mom. I was going through postpartum depression. I didn't even know what that was. Mm-hmm. And even though I had a lot of help from family and friends, it was still an internal process that I was experiencing. And it was rough. It was rough. And I do remember a few times, like, I broke down and Nas would come off the road, make sure we were okay, make sure we were good, and then go back out and work. And he worked really, really hard that first album.
So at what point did the relationship start to go south?
The relationship started to go south years later, like after, I would say, years of arguing and fighting and not seeing eye to eye. And also at this time, I was transitioning and I was evolving spiritually. So my desires were changing, my taste in men changed, or things were just changing for me. I was growing, I was evolving, I was becoming this different person. And the lifestyle that Nas and I were living and the relationship, it was no longer conducive to my evolution. And it was so many fights and so many things that have happened, and I just felt like, I just want to start over anew. We were dragging the relationship. At least I felt like I was, for the sake of being in a relationship, for the sake of destiny. We had small breakups here and there. We were engaged to be married. We, moved several times, went on vacation. We did anything we could possibly do to save the relationship, at the very end when it was about to crumble. And then that last time, it was just there was nothing saving it. It was just, I had to go.
You started seeing other men.
I started seeing other people while we were in the relationship.
Okay.
Ironically, I didn't see anybody after the relationship because it wasn't the same feeling.
Okay.
And I know that's difficult to explain, but when I was in the relationship, Nas was cheating, I was cheating. We were both, young. We had desires. We were experiencing other people. And I learned in a short amount of time that the way you feel about one person has nothing to do with the way you feel about another person. At the end of the day, love is all there is. There's two emotions that a human being can experience at any given time: love and fear. Everything else is derivatives of the two.
Right.
So I was just in a place okay, my boyfriend is this hot rapper. We have all this money. We have cars, jewelry, clothes. There's nothing that I desire material-wise, but I was empty inside. I didn't have the love, the nurturing, the attention that I used to get from him. And I probably wasn't giving the same in return. I think it was a 50-50 thing. I had a lot of expectations when Nas became this megastar. I probably could have been a little bit more understanding. We were young and we were just growing. So he was cheating. I was cheating. The problem was, this is where the problem came in. The problem was who I was cheating with. Now, had I been cheating with some nobody who just wants to play Nintendo all day and smoke cigarettes in front of the TV, that may not have been a problem. Like, okay, you know what, Carmen, we can get through that. We can get past that. We can't see him anymore, but we can get through that. But I was cheating with individuals that were in the same genre of music, this, you know, the same circles, the same company. But I didn't look at it as if I was doing anything wrong. I felt like this is my circle too. These are my peers too. Like I'm in the box too. So it is what it is.
And who are those people?
I had a relationship with Jay-Z. But the thing about Jay-Z and I, we were friends before anything. That was my best friend before we became intimate, before we became lovers to any extent, before anything physical happened between us. That was my friend. And we were really good friends. And I enjoyed our friendship. And I have absolutely no regrets. And, you know, it was what it was.